My why is because I believe every single person deserves to be heard. That every single person has greatness within them.
Hello and welcome back to Master Your Life with Kate McKay. I'm Kate McKay, and this is a show all about stories of transformation, of grit, of grace, and how we can achieve mastery in our lives. And there's many paths to mastery, and my goal, my commitment is to hear and interview amazing people to hear their path so we can get value from them. And today I'm very excited to introduce Jess Sargus. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and talking with you, Kate.
I'm super pumped to have you. And I'm going to do a very brief intro because I find that we can find out who you are much better through questioning. But Jess is a science-backed, high-impact programming. She uses these programming to help firms fall and grow and be. Hold on a second. Let me just stop that section. So, Jess is a high performance keynote speaker, certified mental performance master coach, an undefeated former MMA fighter, the only Ivy League trained lawyer ever to earn that record, man or woman. And Jess brings 22 years of experience as a trial lawyer, unicorn startup executive, fighter, and coach to elite athletes and professionals alike. So she has a couple different programs that we're going to dig into today. But first of all, can you even get over the intro, people? I mean, honest to gosh.
It was a very great intro. Thank you so much, Kate.
Isn't it funny to hear it though? When you think about it,
Yeah.
you're like, gosh, how did I ever put that together? Right.
Yeah.
So why I was so fascinated to talk to you, obviously, is because you have a real focus on the athletic mindset and
hmm
particularly how it is tied into the sport and ties into personal development, but also business development. And I'm really curious about how you have bridged the gap with those three areas in order to bring a sense of mastery. And I guess most importantly, what I'd like to find out first is what is the commonality of all those parts of you?
Sure. I I think the thing that bridged the gap originally between the athletics and that mindset and then high performance as a professional, as a lawyer and as a business exec, was really my lived experience, and then the more that I um, dove into the psychology, more that I dove into the neuroscience, which is also in my background, the more confirmation that I got that I was onto something, that this athletic mindset is a key differentiator for success in business and success in your profession. Um, I think there's a statistic, it's something like 95% of CEOs or C-suite in Fortune 500 companies have some sort of athletic background.
What
And
percentage?
it like 95%.
Oh my goodness, are you serious?
Yeah, it's really that high, that substantial, that they have somewhere in their background, whether it was college sports or not necessarily pro sports, but serious athletic competition, high school, college, somewhere in there, they were athletes. And for me, it comes down to the key traits, the key mindsets that you can practice and that come with repetition as an athlete, that are key differentiators for how you are successful in high stakes, high risk businesses and professions. I distilled them down into about 5 key pillars, but overall, I think the central one that differentiates someone from being a thinker and being good at executing, and actually being a very forward thinking risk taker who's able to succeed in these high risk businesses, is this action orientation. That
Mm.
there's another researcher, Steve Magnus. He's studied Olympic level world class athletes for almost 20 years, and in his research he found all of these athletes at the very highest level, they had things like grit and determination and discipline. That was the same for any kind of athlete who's made something of themselves. But the differentiator between those who were really good and those who were at the top of the podium was this action orientation. And what that was the willingness to take action with incomplete information or
Mm,
without feeling fully ready. They were the people who were able to lean into experimentation and lean into making a decision and then figuring out, was this good, was this bad, and going from there. So it's that action orientation that I think you're trained to develop. Because when you're in a sport, it's all action, right? You have to be
mm.
constantly thinking about what's my next move. Um,
It's so true.
Yeah, and so having that I'll say bias toward action is a key, I think, in bringing what is an elite athletic mindset into any venue. And it doesn't matter if you know how to shoot a 3-pointer or throw a killer cross. All you need to do is start practicing, leaning into action, even when you feel unsure.
That's so true. And I'm very curious about what your perspective is on this as a woman, because I think this is oftentimes what keeps women not taking action or taking a higher risk, because even with the studies that they performed on women who were considering applying for a job, they often won't apply for jobs unless they're 100% certain that they can do the whole job. Where most men will look at it and go, I got 60% of that. The rest I can learn on the way and on the job. So, what would you say as a woman? How were you able to move into uncertainty with such bravery?
I think in one way I was very blessed by the parents that I had, particularly my mom, who has always been a trailblazer, and a the hell I won't kind of person. So I think she primed me, for taking action. I grew up on a horse farm, so it's another instance of where you can't be tentative when you're working around 1,000-pound animal. You have to show leadership, you have to show confidence, or you can get hurt. And it's the same sort of thing when I got into combat sports in law school too. I think we're fed, from the time that we're babies. We're fed a certain picture of what being a girl and what being a woman looks like, and we're meant to believe that femininity is akin to passivity. And I think that femininity in its most powerful form is an active, playing an active role in embracing your own power. And it's not necessarily loud, but it is uh, grounded. And so I think one of the first things that you can do as a woman is really examine the places where you stop yourself, from speaking out or from trying something, and really feel into what's stopping me. What am I thinking? Am I thinking, oh, I'm worried about how I'll appear? I'm worried about someone else's reaction. I'm worried about it, the partners at my firm not thinking that this is a very proper thing to do. And then getting curious about it. Like, is this something that I also think, or is this something where it's something that's been fed to me and I don't necessarily agree with it? If you agree with it, I'm not telling anyone how they need to live their lives. For me, I think for really mastering your life, that it begins with taking ownership of your life, not just being the main character in it, but being the author of your life. So one example of this, I'll say, one of the ways that I broke through, it was practicing martial arts. Because again, not a ton of women at the time that I got into it were really into the fight sports. It's not a traditional thing. Even sometimes people now have an issue with women being involved in combat sports. But try me. But I opened a gym in Philly and had a women's program. And there were regular women that never planned on competing in fight sports. They just wanted to work out and be healthy and learn something cool. And watching these, apartment, managers or teachers or people with just regular like desk jobs start to give themselves permission to throw a real punch, not, a little pity pat punch that it seems feminine, that seems okay, but giving themselves permission to really try to assert themselves on an inanimate object, like a heavy bag, even. The difference, the mental shift, once they gave themselves that permission to try, to be assertive, to work on something, to realize that throwing a punch is all about trying and repetition and getting better, that failing or not doing it perfectly was just data. It didn't mean that they'd never be good at it. And watching them kind of change their mindset into, it's okay to try, it's okay to challenge myself. I started hearing their stories from outside of the gym where, they were starting to speak up in meetings at work. They were asking for promotions and getting them. It really changed their whole outlook of like how I can be assertive and fully agentic in creating the life that I want, not that someone told me I need to have. And so I think the first step really was connecting in a physical way of breaking through that barrier of what's nice and what's expected and what won't ruffle any feathers, and then realizing, hey, I'm okay if I try this.
Right.
I'm
That's
okay
true.
to do this. And it feels really good. It
Right.
feels really good. So
I think
it's
we're
it's
also
an exciting time.
experiencing, Jess, is in our culture too, that men have also been steered away from that aggressive, what is viewed as aggressive, which is actually assertive action. And I think men, in a lot of ways, are coming back into what that means to be an assertive male that embraces that energy, because we need that energy in the world. And I think you're in a magical position of helping people embrace that. So I have a question for you before we move into your methodology. So based on the fact that as I said in your intro, that you're Ivy League trained lawyer, so that you have that under your belt, and then you also have retired undefeated with the MMA. So what did that journey teach you about fear, discipline, and also your identity? And you can answer this in any way that you feel comfortable.
I love starting the question with fear, because fear is something I think a lot about. I think one of the masters of fear is Mike Tyson. I think a master of fear, someone that I think is fear incarnate, basically, is Mike Tyson. And he found in himself, I think, the perfect coach in Customato. Customato was this old boxing coach. He'd never had a pro fight himself. He was an amateur boxer, had one fight, got an injury, and became a coach. But the thing about Cuss is he might have been the boxing world's first mindset coach. And he saw Mike Tyson at the age of 13 sparring a full-grown man for 3 rounds in Cuss's little gym over the top of a police station. Mike at the time was living at the Tryon School for Boys up in the Catskills, where he was detained because he'd gotten into trouble as a kid. And when he was sparring that man, I think what Cuss saw was that fear incarnate, just the power and the fear that Mike instilled, and the fear that he felt. He was painfully shy and insecure. And I think that Cuss really understood that as a fighter, you never eliminate fear. I mean, every fighter that I know understands that fear is a constant passenger as you're training, as you're walking out to fight in that fight. But what they learn is to coexist with fear and to control it, to master it. So it remains a passenger instead of the driver. And so I think understanding that courage doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means that you're acting in the face of fear and that you're making the best decisions because you are the master of yourself in that moment. So I think understanding that we all feel fear and that you're not brave because you have no fear. Maybe you should, maybe you're doing something that requires fear. You're climbing a mountain that's potentially fatal. You're stepping into a cage where the other person's sole goal is to hurt you badly enough that you can't fight anymore. Fear is natural, fear is rational, but training yourself to remain calm in the face of fear and to act anyway allows us to access our executive function so we still make good decisions. And I think that mindset is one of the reasons why, in my experience, pro fighters, really well trained fighters, they are the least likely to get into fights outside of the ring or their cage. They're not getting into bar fights. They're not getting into random agreements that turn physical because they've learned to master themselves. If they get angry on the street or they're insulted, they know I don't need to fight this guy physically. It doesn't matter to my ego. It doesn't matter to my future of what people think about it. They already have confidence in themselves. They know who they are. So they don't need to be wildly aggressive outside of a bar or, in a situation where people have words. They understand how to master themselves. It's the people who have never had that mental training who are the ones who think that getting into a fight is going to solve problems. They've gotten into enough fights, they know that that's the start of your problem when you
Yeah,
get into a
that's
fight.
so true. So
Yeah.
when you're thinking about how those merge, like the fear, the discipline, and then your
Mhm.
identity, what
Yeah.
would you say were your lessons through that training and experience?
I think it's getting comfortable with discomfort. There's a lot of folks that are able to stay inside their comfort zone because that feels safe. Um, and when you stay inside your comfort zone as an athlete, you're not growing. You're not expanding your skills. You're not testing your limits. You're not getting to the next level. And so, in order to do that, you have to get uncomfortable. I mean, and you know this as in lifting weights too. In order to
Mhm.
grow that muscle, you have to make it hurt a little bit. You have to do that in order to challenge your muscles enough to get stronger and to get bigger. And so it's the same thing with athletic mindset and athletic skills, or skills in business and entrepreneurship, is you have to start to develop through repetition, the discomfort or the comfort with discomfort, with putting yourself in positions where you don't necessarily know that you're going to succeed for sure, but you're willing to give it a shot. And then if you don't, if your try is a failure, the key, I think, in that athletic mindset is understanding that that kind of failure is just data for you. It's not destiny. It doesn't mean that you're never going to win. It doesn't mean that you're never going to master that skill. It means it's data. Okay, I tried it that way. It wasn't quite right. Let me try it this other way. And so I think that really helps, that kind of curiosity and viewing your tries as data really helps you to move forward through discomfort and through uncertainty, because at some point, you're going to get to that next level. You're going to achieve what that discomfort has bought for you.
Do you think that this is a sidebar here, but do you think that grit is innate?
I think grit, some people, I'll say this, some people have higher innate levels of it. I think grit is something that anyone can learn and train and increase. I think that grit really is about resilience, and it comes through lived experiences and going through painful or traumatic things. You can increase your grit. You can increase your grit just going through little tiny microbursts of discomfort, like a cold plunge or a sauna session or a high intensity interval workout. Those are all training the parts of your brain that are really like our grit muscles, our mid cingulate cortexes. And so when you go through these things, you don't necessarily need to be traumatized to develop grit. It can help, but it means that anyone can work those areas of our brain that teaches us we can do hard things, because that's really what grit is. Understanding you can do hard things, you can get through hard things, and you can keep going. So I think, I'm going against what my old boxing coach in Philly, Billy Briscoe, used to say, is that if he felt like there was a fighter who wasn't going to make it, he would say, he's light on the left side. And what that means is left side is where your heart is he didn't
Wow.
have the fighter's heart. And
Mm.
that's a very fixed mindset way of thinking. I think that that's been disproven. I think that even someone who is starting out like Mike Tyson as a little insecure or fearful or shy, they can train that grit muscle. And so that left side can get a lot heavier and a lot more strong and a lot more resilient through practice and through repetitions. There's an old school part of the fight community, like my old school coach Billy Briscoe, who used to say that fighters who didn't have grit were light on the left side, meaning they didn't have the heart to be a fighter. And I think that's a very fixed mindset that has been disproven by a lot of exercise science and performance psychology, is that grit is something that you can train and improve and practice, so that your grit muscle, your mental grit muscle, your mid cingulate cortex, you can practice through small periods of stress or hardship, getting better at your resilience and at your grit and your discipline. So I absolutely believe that it is something that anyone can learn and improve as a skill.
That's such good news. Yeah, that's such good news. I love hearing that. When we think about our personality, is we used to think, oh, you are who you are, but now it's like
Mhm.
65 to 70%. So you have like a 35 to 40% bounce rate that you can play with. So that's hopeful for
Yeah.
me. If you choose
Yeah.
to look at that way. So you
Yeah.
work with both elite athletes and
Mhm.
professionals. So what's
Yep.
the biggest gap you see between people's potential and their actual performance? What would you say their biggest gap is?
I think that's the mindset gap. I think
Mm.
that anyone has the potential to continuously improve and to continuously grow and get better, but not everyone has practiced the mindset skills that allow them to get in that mode of learning and curiosity and continuous improvement. And so that's I think the biggest holdback for whether you're a fighter, a professional fighter, or a professional lawyer, or a startup executive, is not working on the mental part of your game. That you don't change the mental part of your game, you're going to get what you've always gotten. But when you start using and training your mind, it is an incredibly powerful tool to get you to the next level and keep breaking through the plateaus that you thought were your upper limit. They're not your upper limit anymore. We can train our minds so that we can put in the practice, we can put in the repetitions, and we can go through the discomfort of becoming even greater than we thought we might be able to be at the beginning. So I think that's the biggest gap right now, for any kind of professional, is failing to train your mindset, along with the other hard skills that you have in your arsenal.
Yeah, that's so powerful. So, what does mental performance mastery mean to you? And how do we apply that in everyday life?
Sure. Well, I was certified as a mental performance mastery coach through my mentor, Brian Kane. He's worked with, World Series teams and UFC world champions, and works with University of Texas and all kinds of really high level sports teams and high level individuals. And what he says is what I'll say here is that mental performance is a skill set that anyone can learn and improve. Like I was saying, with what is the biggest gap between your performance and your potential, and that's where mindset and mental performance lives. And so that is my definition, is the skill sets that we learn and practice that allow us to think very deeply and without judgment, but with curiosity about, how do I improve? How do I get better? What do I need to start, stop, and continue doing in order to achieve my goals? And so I think understanding that it is a skill set. It's not just an innate set of characteristics, and you are who you are, and you have this cast or role that you're always going to be limited to. There are no limits once you start in harnessing the incredible power of your brain to get you where you really want to be.
That's so cool. So in that gap, right? So what we're going to focus on just in this question is, how do we close that gap?
Mhm.
Because people have what they believe they have a capacity to do, but there really is that true capacity, right? Which is what I call the greatness gap, good to
Yeah.
great. So what's the
Mhm.
first step or a couple steps that people could take in order to start closing that gap?
I have a system that is 5 really key pillars of mindset, but the very first step, I think, is understanding and accepting that you do have unlimited potential, that through learning and through effort that you can improve. And that's what Carol Dweck, a psychologist, calls growth mindset. The belief that through that learning and effort, anyone can learn and improve, and that our innate set of characteristics is not our destiny. It's simply our starting point.
That's so good. So the first step is understand and accept that you have the capacity to improve. And then
Yes.
what would be that step that you would suggest after that?
After that, I think it is, I'll go a little bit out of order, but I think the next step is really starting to be curious about what you really want.
Mm,
We're taught that success looks a particular way, and it's very linear, and that there is one path to success, like for a particular profession. There's one path to success for a human, big car, big house, good marriage, uh, lots of money in the bank. Like that's the formula for success. But is that really what makes you happy? What are the moments where you experience joy and peace and that feeling of flow, where you're doing something and you've lost track of time because you're so in it? So that would be the second step for me, is really understanding, where is it that I want to go with my life?
mm,
The number one regret of the dying is that they lived a life according to others' expectations instead of the life that was really inside of them.
mm,
And so I think that's that key first step, is, what is the life that's inside of you that you actually want? Start getting in touch with that, and really, I think, let yourself go with it. There's sometimes we stop ourselves. Self-limiting beliefs, that's step one of, there's only so far I can go. Let's throw that out. Other self limits are like having a dream, but then limiting our dreams to what we think is practical or possible. And so I have another 3 letter framework that I don't know where I heard it. It's not mine originally, but I love it, and I use it with a lot of people in my talks and my coaching. It's the 3 Ds. And the first D is meant to set up with this process, and it's delusional.
mm,
What dream do you have that you would have and be worried someone else would say, no, that's delusional. That's not possible. That's not practical. There's no way you could do that. Let yourself have that delusional dream, because if your dream doesn't scare you just a little, it's not big enough. You've kept yourself in that comfort zone somehow. So what dream do you have that is so exciting to you it scares you just a little bit? that's your North Star. That's probably the direction that you want to start taking smaller actions to get to. So let yourself be delusional, be that little girl on the, playing with your friends when you're 5 and thinking, I'm going to be an astronaut. All right.
Mhm.
Not everyone's going to be an astronaut, but no one's telling her, well, you need to be practical. And,
Mhm.
it's statistically, that's, very few people make it. No one's telling the little girl that. They're letting her be delusional because that's how she grows. That's how she learns. That's how she develops interests in science and math. And so I think letting ourselves, wherever we are in life, I'm in midlife right now, letting ourselves dream wherever we are. Where is it that I want to go? What use do I want to make of my one wild and precious life? Right. So I think letting yourself be delusional and then see where that takes you, it is going to help you kind of start your trajectory and then start putting in the motion of the little steps, getting you closer and closer to that big North Star.
I think that's a really key point is when who we wanted to be when we were younger. And often I bring up the point that what people used to tell you you were two of is usually the energy that you need to get there.
Yeah.
Loud, too smart, too this, too that. We all heard it. And
Mhm.
oftentimes those are the places we took the dial and we went, turned it to off, switched
Mhm.
the button to off on that two of. And what would you say what did you hear when you were young that you were two what?
I I don't know if I heard it a lot, but I was always smart, and I noticed that um, I shouldn't raise my hand too much, and
Wow.
so
Too
so
smart.
to avoid people not liking me, to avoid social disapproval. There were a lot of times growing up in elementary school and throughout school that I knew the answer. And I forced myself not to raise my hand
Wow.
because I didn't want to always be the girl who's like, I know.
Yeah. The
I did the
know-it-all,
reading.
the
Yeah.
know-it-all. But isn't that
Yeah.
wild to think about that for you, where you are in your life, that to be too smart or to know all the answers was actually where you were like, oh, I can't be that. It's so telling. For me, I think I was just too loud and too enthusiastic. And I thought when I heard that the word means enthusiasm means in the divine, like you're in
Mhm.
the spirit of God. I was like, okay, well, that's not my problem, everybody. That's not my problem. That's your problem.
Yeah.
But so learning
Yeah.
to embrace that has been, absolutely a significant part. So
Yeah.
a couple more questions, and I want to get into your book and
Sure.
more about your speaking, and also I want to talk about something really important. So something that you told me at the beginning. So in your
Okay.
experience, what separates someone who performs well from someone who performs exceptionally well under pressure?
I think it is being able to pull themselves into that present moment,
Mm,
because the present is the only place where we can take action, where we can be fully absorbing the data around us, what's happening, what we hear, see, taste, smell, all of those things, they all live in the present. Our anxiety lives in the future. What might happen? What could happen? What are people going to think? Or, depression, a lot of is past focused, thinking that our past is again our destiny, or something that will always live with us, rather than something that informs us and something that shapes us, but isn't the end of the story. And so the really exceptional high performers that I know how under pressure to stay present, to stay in that present moment and think, what is the next most important thing for me to do? What one thing do I need to do now? And then stringing that together. And the more that they can stay action oriented and in that present moment, the more effective they can be, and the more they can rebound if things go wrong. If they try something in the moment,
and
it
they
doesn't work
will.
well. Exactly. And it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But that is how you get that exceptional performance. You know, the shot that you took that pinged off the edge of the goalpost, but comes back to you. If you're not in that moment and you're thinking, "Oh God, it pinged off the goalpost," if you're not thinking, "Okay, well now what angle can I send it at? It happened to come back to me." Like you can make that goal off of an error. And so I think staying in that moment and continuing to take in the data and do your best with the information you have at the time, that's what allows you to be exceptional under pressure.
Bang and a boom. I love that. And I would say that too, and from particularly my work, whether it's in restorative coaching or high performance, right? So I'm in that bridge. The
Mm-hmm.
same methodology applies, which is how can we expand the present moment? Because we're either anxious about the future or depressed about the past, and that compresses this moment into this tiny micro breath. We're like the present moment is just, we're just trying to breathe. But the
Yeah.
work of both of you and I is to expand that present moment so that you have the 180, 360 degree of being able to see
Yes.
what is. So exceptional is in the present. I love that, Jess. That's so
Yeah.
powerful. So looking back across your, well, 2020, 22 years, obviously in the
Yeah.
courtroom and the boardroom and startups and also the cage, because obviously as an MMA fighter, what's the one truth about human potential, human growth, human understanding you wish everyone understood at a soul level sooner?
It's a refrain I'm gonna hit again and again, which is that our potential is unlimited.
Mm.
Um, I want people to know that our brains can be either our nemesis or our hero, and that through the power of neuroplasticity, which is our brain's ability to constantly be growing and forming new pathways and more interconnections, that we can harness the power of our brains to go the places that we thought we never could before. And that potential is untapped and unlimited for all of us. And so that's the truth that I would like everyone to know, is that we are only limited by our thoughts, and we are unlimited and freed by our thoughts as well.
Isn't that so powerful, Jess? That's a total mic drop. I'm loving that. So, the book that you're working on that's going to be available for pre launch in February 2026
Mhm.
and available for more readily available later on in 2026 has this
Mhm.
phenomenal name called Fierce Agency. I love that name. And one
Yeah.
of the thematics that you talk about a lot, that you have a deep passion about, is what I was secretly referencing earlier, was self-leadership.
Mhm.
That is very important to you, that
Yeah.
concept of self-leadership. Why?
I think it's the key to freedom. I think that when we lead ourselves, again, we're the CEO of our lives, we're the author of our lives, we're not just the main character that things happen to. I think when we seize that kind of agency, like I said, fiercely, without apology, that's when we are at our most free. That's when we get to direct our lives. We get to choose the direction of our lives, and we get to go after the things that mean the most to us, not anyone else, not what we were told was supposed to be important to us, but what we actually are going to want to be thinking about, on our deathbeds, if we're so lucky. That what is it that we wanted to pursue in our lives, not necessarily accomplish, but what is the journey that I wanted to be on? What did I want to experience in this life? And I think that the answer to that question is found through self leadership, through taking an active role in directing our own lives.
So powerful. I love that. I absolutely love the name Fierce Agency. And if you could just describe to our listeners, what does it mean to you, that title?
To me, fierce agency is like I said before, it is being the master of your own life, again, with passion and with enthusiasm, without apology, being bold without shame, being brazen with it, that you don't need to apologize for taking an active role in your life. You can be as enthusiastic about it. You can be as excited about it. That's a wonderful thing to feel. And I think, I've never been accused of being cool. There's another podcast I love, the Smartless podcast. They always talk about a sexy indifference. I've never been indifferent. People are nonchalant. They're cool. They don't care too much. I'm chalant. I am chalant all the time. I am earnest and enthusiastic.
Yay.
And to me, that's a big part of fierce agency. Is it's okay to be excited about directing your life. You don't have to apologize for that. You can be fiercely proud of it. So fierce agency is what that means to me.
And as you become more and more successful, there are less people around you in some ways, but in other ways, the stakes become higher because you're surrounded by people that are more high performers and have greater expectation. And I think a lot of people crumble under that pressure. What would you say for people that want to reach for more, but fear is preventing them from reaching up and out of where they currently exist?
I think a real key to that, and you and I talked a little bit about this before, is self-efficacy. And what self-efficacy is not the belief that we're always going to be successful, but that we have the tools that we need to build and grow and learn, and that we might face just an enormous amount of pressure, but we trust ourselves enough to handle that pressure, that we know we're capable of handling that pressure. And so the beautiful thing about our brains is that when we start to learn how to handle pressure repeatedly and build that self-trust, that self-efficacy, you can do it in one area. You can do it in athletics, and it transfers perfectly to your
100%.
professional life too.
Yep.
Like I was talking about before with those women at the boxing class,
Mhm.
that their self-efficacy, their belief that they can do hard things and learn and grow from it and push their limits transferred from that boxing gym into their offices when they were speaking up at meetings, when they were asking for promotions and getting them. So I would say if you're trying to take more risks, more challenge in your professional life, start practicing it in other areas of your life and building that self-trust, that self-efficacy, that you can do hard things, you can stumble and even fall, and you can get back up and keep going, and it's not the end of the world. And that's going to help transfer to those professional settings. And then you'll get more practice there too, and build even more self-confidence, self-trust, and self-efficacy in those areas as well.
And I would say that as being a coach, that I have always had a coach, a therapist, a coach, a lawyer,
Mhm.
a doc, all the people that you need, because we need a team of people around us rising
Yes.
us up. And I would never be able to win in my fitness competitions if I didn't have the right coach. And that's why I had such a winning season this last summer, is because I had a coach that believed in me, but they also were willing to challenge me. Like,
Yeah.
just Katie, just shut up. Do you want to win? Yes. Okay, then do what I say. Okay, says Katie. Never do I do that, but I did that with this coach. So I think it's really important that we have people in our lives that are willing to stand in for us and to push us in ways that make us uncomfortable, because they love and believe us enough that they have a vision of what we want, maybe even bigger than what we can dream. And that's why we have to keep rising, why we have to keep rising, even when we don't feel like it. Because just there's a lot of people in this world right now that are suffering through uncertainty. And your biggest success, viewers and listeners, it can actually happen when it is the most challenging time. It certainly has been my life. And I want to
Mhm.
say and encourage you to talk to Jess if you need a speaker for your organization, your sports team. If you need a coach that's going to challenge you, someone who's lived that life, the nonlinear, powerful, and courageous life, with a heart, definitely reach out to Jess. She's here to help you and support you on your journey. So we'll be sure to share all of Jess's contact information, including her new book link coming soon. I can't wait to read that. And Jess, any final words in our really powerful conversation today?
Thank you so much, Kate. I love what you said about the necessity of team and community. And I think that's absolutely right. That the one thing I want to make sure isn't misunderstood, that for me, self leadership isn't about just doing it on your own, but it means being your own best leader. And that in order to really be effective, like you said, we need a team. We need a community of people. You need people for different aspects of your life too. You know, some people, you need them to push you, because sometimes our friends and our mentors and our coaches can see us more clearly than we see ourselves. And they can also sometimes have more confidence in us than we have in our confident in ourselves in our darkest moments. So it's important to have those people, and it's important to have community that's there, that is with love and with support, believing in you, and helping you and allowing you to help them too. It's a
True.
two-way street.
Sure
And
is.
I think having that sense of community is another really wonderful way to give ourselves a safety net, right? That if we fall, we know our team still got us. You know,
Yeah.
it not just that I've got me, but they've got me too. I've got them. We've got each other. And that's the most powerful thing that I think we have is that, yes, lead yourself, go where you want to go, but what is life beyond having a relationship with people that we love and a feeling of community? So that's my last thought, is that self-leadership, I think, is a key to freedom, but I think community and teamwork is a key to fulfillment and happiness and love.
So true. Such a mic drop right there. And I think also too, just in conclusion, is that basically what you're saying is that, yeah, we have to be our own leader. It's not enough to self-advocate for ourselves. We must lead ourselves from a place of truth and knowingness. And I love the idea that we pursue for the sake of pursuing, not for the success or the completion of something, because our heart longs for the pursuit. And
Yes.
yeah, and you described that really beautifully. Well, Jess, thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate you. I'm really grateful to have this time together today.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to talk with you every time, Kate. I feel like I've known you for years. You just have a beautiful energy and a beautiful soul, and you're so smart. So I really thank you for having this conversation with me today, having me on your podcast. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm going to be lit up the rest of the day because of it.
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be in partnership with you because this is the way we lead, is with these powerful partnerships. So thank you. And thanks to all the viewers and listeners for joining me again for another episode of Master Your Life. Please make sure to reach out to Jess. And remember, the bottom line is that you have to pursue your passions, and our potential is unlimited, as Jess said. So take care, everyone, and see you again next time.